We did two classes where we did a whole map, a whole overview of the structure to get a sense of a book that is actually very, very thorough and sometimes can be a little bit confusing for people. But once we know the logic of the book, it actually becomes much easy, hopefully, much easy to chew over and digest and understand what the author is trying to bring us to comprehend. So what we're going to start with is the introduction, finally, what he calls the introduction of his book. And it's actually, Tzipora, welcome. And welcome, Fortuna. And it's actually a very thorough introduction, a very interesting introduction, because it actually is going to touch on many things that are going to get unpacked throughout the book. It's also going to drop some bombs that are, kind of life-changing and altering, meaning it's a change in perspective. And they stand alone in, they stand firm on the introduction. They get supported through the text, but they're there. And there's two things I want to say before we start the introduction. Number one, as an introduction, what it's going to do is he's going to lay out the 10 benefits of this thing called trust. How is it going to benefit your life? Right? He's going to give you the selling point. And he's also going to tell you not only the 10 benefits, but the 10 ways in which a person who masters this is going to be better off than even the person who seems to have access to every physical want and need, the alchemist. Or we can call them the modern day counterfeiter, or, drug lord, or, the wealthiest person you can imagine. They can print money, right? So 10 benefits in your life, both your spiritual and your very physical life, and 10 ways in which you're even better as a master of trust than even the person who can have access to every financial resource that they could imagine. So how are they going to be better than that person? That's what he's going to cover in the introduction. Now, as I said, as an introduction, it actually does bring up, because it is an introduction to a sefer, to a book, it's going to bring up topics that he's going to unpack also throughout the book. So it's going to, sometimes we're going to be plagued with a particular question. As an introduction, it is going to give us things that he's going to later on. So what I want, and then I also said, he's going to say things that kind of stand alone here, and maybe they don't get repeated again, although obviously they become more obvious by the time you've finished this journey. So with that, what I want to say is, I almost think it would be a neat exercise for us, and I know some of you take notes, to have a little notebook or somewhere where you start writing the questions that come up. And we can, as always, I welcome questions and we can discuss them, but I'm also going to challenge ourselves and give myself permission as a person leading this discussion to say, this is going to be covered in the book and what I want later on. And what I want us to do, the reason I want to do that is because I want us to, by the end of the 7th chapter, when we've gone through the entire logic, the entire journey, for us to go back to our list of questions and see how now we actually know the answer. Because what tends to happen is in the introduction, we start getting very, very antsy with questions that actually he's going to unpack. And if we actually follow the journey, we're going to be very, very satisfied. Now, another thing that I will say, and I'll say this, it's almost like a disclaimer. Sometimes the questions that we will have, and we have to be honest about this, and I will call it out as it is if it comes up, not as a judgment, as something that we all might all be struggling with at some point, is sometimes the questions are not real questions on bitachon, but they're questions on emunah. And if so, that's how we're going to address it. And we're going to see that because it's a question on emunah, it doesn't actually get addressed in the text, because this is a text on bitachon, and therefore it assumes that you are solid in your emunah. Why? We go back to what I said when we did the map of trust, and we talked about what is the difference. When we did part one of the map, we talked about what is the difference between emunah, faith, and bitachon. And just in a nutshell, we can imagine this, as I just said it, that the question might come up in emunah, but it's not addressed in the book because it's not a question of bitachon, because the book on bitachon assumes that you have emunah. We can go back to the analogy that the Ramban Nachmanides gives us about the tree, the fruit tree, the tree and the fruit, right? We have a tree that is a fruit tree, right? If we have fruit, it must be that we have a tree. But just because we have a tree does not mean that we have fruit, right? What is the fruit and what is the tree? The tree is faith, emunah, belief in the Creator who is constantly creating everything in existence, right? And everything is being done according to His will and His plan. And bitachon is the reliance on that Creator, right? So I cannot have fruit without the tree, right? So just to be honest with ourselves sometimes, and I want us to be honest when we write our questions that are coming up. Sometimes want to say, actually, that is a question in the Emunah, and that is okay, but we have to be honest with ourselves, because if we're going to improve in our bitachon, we want to know what's holding us back. Maybe I really need to start working, right? And it's going to help us. I'm not saying this is not going to help. Of course, this is going to help you strengthen your emunah. But we have to understand sometimes what is tripping us over and causing a struggle in bitachon is because maybe there is a fundamental question in emunah that we really need to really work on. Okay, so that's just an area for us to note. It might come up, it might not come up. But as I'm challenging ourselves to observe the questions that we have as we're reading the introduction and the rest of the text, and challenging ourselves to be, not because I don't want anybody, again, to ask questions. We can ask questions and we'll try to answer. And sometimes I will give you the answer ahead of time. Sometimes I will tell you, I want you to hold off because he's about to tell you and he's going to tell it to you better than I can tell it to you. We'll see when the time comes. I'm not saying don't ask the questions, but I'm saying I want you to observe if by the end of the journey, the author actually answered your questions, because most likely than not, that will be the case. You will have arrived at the answer just from your own understanding of this beautiful text, and that there is a reason why this is the fundamental text on the topic of the midah, of the attribute of bitachon, of reliance on the Creator. Okay, so with that, let's start with the introduction. Let me just check that there's nothing here in the chat that I need to pay attention. Yes, the mapping is actually the two classes on the map, we shared via email, and I will hopefully tonight also kind of add it to a postscript on the email so that in case you weren't receiving those emails before because you just subscribed to the class, you can get it. Okay, so I'm going to start here with the Felix edition of the Gate of Trust, which is a wonderful edition. I'm actually going to also make another disclaimer, which is that I don't usually, although the Hasidic footnotes to this text are beautiful and wonderful, I don't always use them. I might use them, off the cuff, but I don't intersect the flow of the text with the notes, only because I don't want you to get distracted from what the author is trying, the journey and the logic of the text. So in your own spare time, if you have the sefer, if you have the book, I highly, highly encourage you to go through those beautiful footnotes. But I think for the sake of learning what Rabbeinu Bachya wants to teach us and really grasping the fundamental, what is bitachon and how to apply in our lives, we should stick to the text. And of course, I will try to color it in with some of what I already know from the footnotes or stories or whatever. Okay, so page number 2, on placing our trust in God alone. It's very interesting to note that this is the opening statement of the book, which utilizes the word alone. It's a very important qualifier. He didn't say on placing our trust in God. He said on placing our trust in God alone. We're going to see that one of the most important concepts in this book is something called exclusivity. Exclusivity is going to be something he's going to later on tell us See, I told you this, he's going to unpack so many things. He drops them here, but they're going to get unpacked later on. Something he's going to tell us is a requirement for bitachon, this thing that we're trying to achieve and has so many benefits that we're going to be like, ooh, I kind of want that in my life, right? For this thing to actually be real bitachon, there has to be exclusivity. So from the get-go, he tells you, this is not about wishy-washy. This is not about, trust this and trust that. No. Bitachon is something that is exclusive on God, reliance and putting your reliance, your trust in God alone. And I will say something also, a lot of things get a little bit lost in translation. Nothing is ever an exact thing. And those of us who speak multiple languages can attest to that, right? Obviously my forte is not Hebrew, but I am a bilingual person. And the word trust is a very good word for bitachon, but it's one of many words that one can use for bitachon. And it's not necessarily the most accurate. The reality is not the most accurate. I think we said it in the map. A better, more accurate word would be reliance, because when we understand trust and we understand the word bitachon, right? And we, those of us who grew up in Latin America, our first exposure maybe to that word bitachon is our security team in school, isn't it? Right? Security, right? There's bituach leumi, there's insurance, right? There's an insurance, there's a guarantee, there's a security, right? So all these things already are telling us, it's not like I trust my friend, I trust my doctor. Now there's something a little bit deeper here, right? So yes, it's trust, but it's almost like, in Spanish, we say se queda corta. It's like it falls short a little bit, the word, right? There's, a more accurate English word might be reliance, might be, security. So, Bailey, maybe check your settings or something in your audio, okay? So that's just a note. We're going to use the word trust because, again, that also works in English, but it's important for us to know as we're trying to kind of master this and work on ourselves, I think linguistics are very important, the use of language for ourselves. Like we can ask ourselves, well, am I really right now in a state of reliance? Like, am I really just surrendering and depending fully on this entity, my creator, as it says right here, on placing our trust in God alone? All right, author's introduction. Having previously discussed in the previous gate the obligation to accept the service of God, I have seen it to be appropriate to now explain that which is most necessary for a person who wishes to be a servant of God, and that is to rely on Him and on God in all His matters. Now, what is he telling us? The author is telling us, I already walked you through 3 gates. This is a 4th gate of an entire book of 10 gates called the Chovot Halevavot, duties of the heart. Okay, here I have volume 1. It's a 2-volume series. I'm sure there's 1 volume also, but I have the 2 volume. And it's 10 gates, okay? And these 10 gates walk us through a beautiful journey of the duties of the heart, meaning the ways in which serve Hashem that are not necessarily, public, right? They're not, the lulav and esrog. They're not the sitting in the sukkah. They're not the eating kosher. They are how am I in that relationship on an internal level when I am shaking lulav and esrog, when I am praying, when I am going about my business? How is internally? What are the duties of the heart, right? How do I serve God from an internal place? And so before this gate, the gate of trust, he had taught us the gate of service. The gate of service? Yes, the gate of service, okay? So in order for a person to be a person who serves their creator, actually, let me look something for you, just to give you a sense here of the 3 previous gates, just because it really is a beautiful sefer. I don't know why I don't venture out and teach it. The first one, very similar to the Shari Yehuda Muna and Tanya, or in terms of the idea, is the gate of unity, right? The first thing that a person needs to know to serve, to have be in a relationship, in a panini, in an internal relationship with the Creator is, there's one Creator. What does it mean? What does unity mean, right? So much like the Tanya, we begin with Shari Yehuda Muna. Here we begin with the gate of the unity of God. Then we have hold on. Why did I not do this before? Then we have the gate of reflection, which is actually one of my favorites. It's very beautiful. It comes to challenge you to look at the world around you and actually, by logic, reflect all around you. To reflect on your creation. Use your mind on your creator. Use your mind to see your creator, to understand. And then, of course, we now can actually, by logic, again, this is all very logical, you can serve him. But he says right here in the introduction of the fourth gate, right? Because the third gate is the one about service, the gate of serving God. And the fourth gate, he's going to tell us, okay, I already told you about serving your creator, but I'm going to tell you right now that if you actually want to be a person of service of your creator, there's one thing you actually need to master, right? And that is this attribute of bitachon, meaning how could you be of service to a creator in whom you don't rely, right? Evidently, it's an important component, right? And we've talked about, any relationship in our lives, right? How can we be in a real relationship if we don't trust, right? It's not a real relationship if it's not an element of trust. We know those of us who are married, those of us who have children, all those relationships, there's a very fundamental component, and that is trust. Obviously, like we said before, we're talking something even stronger than trust, it's actually a reliance, but let's move forward. Okay. So now he tells us, look, it's most necessary for a person to rely in God in all his matters. For by doing so, there will be great benefits, both in Torah matters and in worldly matters, meaning to say there's going to be spiritual benefits, and there's actually going to be pretty tangible, benefits in your life as you feel your life as a human being in this earth. Benefit number one. Here they call it tranquility. Okay, I call it worry-free. You can interpret it in different ways, but let's go through it. Okay, the first benefit is that bitachon causes a person to be free from worry, allowing him to devote his energy to serving God, right? If you want to be a person who serves your creator, because at this point you understand that there is a creator and that your life is not haphazardly happening and randomly, right? And that you're indebted to your creator and you're joyful in your maker, that there is a maker that allows you to be here. By logic, you want to do the best job you can, right? You didn't just get put here for no reason. You got put here and you get put here every single millisecond because your creator, right, has something that he wants you to achieve in this world. Therefore, just with that realization, you're like, oh, okay, I'm ready. And now how do I serve him? Well, we got to serve him. We didn't in this class, but he taught us the gate of service. But now he's telling us, okay, but there's a whole section that you need to know about being in this relationship with your creator that is going to be critical to the relationship, and that is reliance. Now, this reliance is going to have 10 benefits. The number one benefit is that you're going to be free of worry. Free of worry to what? To actually serve him, to actually go enjoy this life of service in the world. Okay, so let's see. And this is one of the Torah benefits. There's going to be 5 Torah benefits and 5 worldly benefits. So among the Torah benefits, I'm on page number 4, is the tranquility of the soul, which is free of worry as a result of this reliance on God, just as a servant is bound to place his trust in his master. Very interesting analogy that maybe we can read it and we kind of overlook it, but if we stop and think, just as a servant is bound to place his trust in his master. Nowadays, we can't really so much relate to the analogy, but a sefer that is 1,000 years old almost, right? Yeah, 1,000 years old. That analogy might have meaning, but let's think about it. What is a servant to his master? A servant, literally, that's the only one who could clothe him, is the only one who could give him his needs, right? He's completely dependent, reliant on this master. There's nobody else, right, who could do anything for this person but his master, okay? So therefore, he knows his master's going to take care of him. So he's going to be, at least as long as his master's around, he's taken care of. Okay. 4, a person who does not place his trust in God places his trust in an entity other than God. This is the number one first really important truth bomb of the book, I would say. And it is a truth bomb because it's not something that we, commonly hear. We weren't trained in it. It was not part of perhaps our mindset, right? The fact that, wait, if I'm always placing my trust in something, right? And if I'm not placing my trust in God, then by default, I'm placing it somewhere else. Now I better ask myself and figure out what is it that I'm trusting? What is it that I'm actually relying on? Because as we're about to see, if I'm in a situation where I catch myself relying on in other things, and we all have been there and we likely will be there, and the idea is to catch ourselves and autocorrect, right? Based on all this new knowledge that we're going to have. If we are there, we're inevitably going to be very, very nervous people, right? There is going to be worry. And I'm actually going to give you the punchline because why not? The reason there's going to be worry is because these things that we're placing our trust on are actually fickle. They're non-reliable. They're creation. So when we're in it, we don't realize it. But if we step back and we look at it academically and we say, oh, so I'm putting my reliance on creation, which is limited, which is faulty by nature, because it's part of the world of nature, of the world of creation. Well, obviously it's not foolproof. Therefore, subconsciously, I'm going to actually always worry because I never know 100% that this thing is reliable. Not because I don't know it, but because it's not. I know actually, subconsciously, I know that all these things are not reliable. They don't have the power. And obviously he's going to make a very, very strong case for that. So let's move on. Okay. So if a person places his trust in something other than God, then God removes his divine providence from him and leaves him in the hands of the entity in which he places. Whoa. So here we read this and we're like, 1 second. God creates the world. God is constantly creating the world. The translation divine providence is almost, I just heard David Nesanoff in an interview. He actually wrote a really nice book, The Rebbe. I never met the Rebbe many times. And he was saying like, it's such a funny, it's such a funny translation, divine providence for Ashgacha Pratit, because like divine providence are not words that we ever use. Like who uses such words? Providence? Like when do you ever use such a word? And divine, right? Really, the definition of Ashgacha, which is the word here in the Hebrew, his supervision, his Ashgacha is right here in the word Ashgachato. Is super, like I just said, it's supervision. Okay, so God creates the world and is in the world. He is constantly creating and ordaining everything happening, meaning he is the only supervisor of this. He's the master here. Okay, so how can you say that he could remove his supervision? Obviously, there's something very important here to unpack. So God does not remove himself from the world. If God stopped speaking the world, so to speak, the world would go back to nothingness. Okay, he's constantly creating the world, and we don't believe as other faiths in a creator who created and then stepped back. There is a concept in Judaism that is fundamental, which is the concept of constant creation. Okay, so God is constantly creating. He is constantly involved in the world. Therefore, there is ashgacha, there is supervision. And pratit means there is individual supervision, which, by the way, I'll make a parenthesis here and I'll say, in that same notebook, in that same journal, one of the things that you could actually do is not just write your questions, but note those times in your life where you actually see the ashgacha pratit, the divine providence, or better translate, the individual supervision of your creator in your life. Because when we actually sensitize ourselves to seeing those instances and having those, as we call in the world of Chabad, we use this term very loose, very often, ashgacha pratis, right? When we have these moments of revelation of, oh, there was ashgacha pratis, right? But it's all ashgacha pratis. But sometimes we see how obvious it is. We should take a moment and write it down, because it's going to solidify that which I said before, that sometimes is a little bit lacking, which is the emunah. And the more solid is our emunah, the easier it's going to be for us to obtain bitachon, to master bitachon, right? So when I see my creator really obviously, right, then it becomes really real that I believe in him, right? Because the problem is the problem is the world of nature is actually it's all a big scam. God made it very hard. He put us in a world where he's completely concealed, and now we have to go and find him. Like it's like my friend Margie Sher always says, it's a game of peekaboo. I see you. You know, it's peekaboo, peekaboo. But and I'm playing this game of peekaboo. I see you, right? I'm trying to find the God that has not made himself visible or overt. So now going back to the text. So what is he saying here? When in my life, I live a life where I put my reliance on other things other than my creator, guess what? Peekaboo, I see you, not happening. Nope, this is what's happening. He stays concealed. He says, you like the world of concealment? It's okay. I created a world of concealment. I don't have to reveal myself for the world to run. You can be in a world of concealment. Sei gesund. Be well. See how that goes for you. However, there's an alternative. There's an alternative, and this is what the Torah is constantly training us to do as Jews. We can live a little higher, to quote the theme or the brand of my friend Margie Farrer. You can actually, as a Jew, through everything you adopt a perspective where you can actually live in a world of revelation. Even though you live in a world of concealment, it's the biggest and coolest paradox in the world. And bitachon is going to be crucial for a person to actually live in a world of revelation. Okay, in a world where God is not concealed. And I'm sure, this year has been a testament of, all of us exercising our emunah muscles and our bitachon muscles. And we're all familiar with stories of tremendous bitachon and things that, of people who've experienced tremendous miracles. Also, we also have a lot of questions of people who didn't, okay? But that's a different topic. But even if it's not for this year, even in our daily lives, I'm sure many of us in this room know people who live where or you obviously that is when you see people, because you're very likely going to see that they live on another dimension. They live on a very, very high level of bitachon. And this is what the author is inviting us to do by telling us, by using the negative here, which is when you don't, God will remove his divine providence and you will be left in the hands of that. What you trust is what's going to be there for you. So if you just want to trust the media and the politicians and the stockbroker and the weatherman and the this and the that, okay, so that's for you. You want to live in that world, acknowledge it, and then say, okay, there's a God who runs the show, right? So we can use actually current events as a little bit of an example. You have to go and do your civic duty of going and voting, right? And you have to know, you have to read the policy, you have to know what each politician stands for, and you have to see how it aligns with your values and, as a Jewish individual, et cetera, et cetera. Fine, right? But at the end of the day, you have to go there knowing, God, you're the president. That's it. Everybody else is just being appointed, not by me, not by everybody in the nation, but by the hand of God. Of course, I have to go and show up for the charade, the play, right? That God created. That's called nature, right? Same thing when you're running a company. God created a whole charade, it's world of nature, and your business, your company, you have to go and you have to call the clients and you have to call the lawyer and you have to, incorporate and you have to set up the marketing and the branding, all things beautiful. You have to do it. But the minute you think you're running the show, right? Or your lawyer is running the show, or your accountant is running the show, or your client is running the show, and every day there's going to be times where we're going to think that, the accountant said no, the client said no, the politician said this, the world is no, 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 no. Relax. There's not. It's just a world. It's just like it's a stage. It's a performance. We're just actors, right? But you know who's actually running the whole thing is actually God. And I'm just here because God asked me to have a leading role in this beautiful, play called nature, called the world. Okay. So it's a very important point. If a person trusts in something else that is not him, then God will conceal himself from it. There won't be ICU. There'll be just peekaboo. There's no ICU. Okay, peekaboo, or you can have peekaboo ICU. It's your choice. A person chooses, and if he trusts in Hashem, he's going to win the game of peekaboo ICU. Okay. Otherwise, he's going to be left in the hands of the entity in which he placed his trust. Page number 6. Now he's going to illustrate. And the person who places his trust in something other than God will be like one regarding whom it is said, and this is from Jeremiah. It says there, this is describing the person who places his trust in other than Hashem. It says there, for my people have committed 2 evils. They have forsaken me, the spring of living waters, to dig for themselves cisterns, broken cisterns that do not hold water. What are the 2 mistakes that the people committed? Number 1, they forsake me. They traded me off for something completely fickle. I am the source of living waters, the spring. Everything comes from me. And they traded me for something completely fickle and nothing. What? Right? They're not the source of the water, of the blessing, right? They can't even hold a blessing because they're broken cisterns. Okay? So we traded something really good and really solid. We had access to the source of blessing. And what did we go do? It's the analogy that the Navi is telling us. We go build some cistern, and it's not even a cistern that can hold anything because it's just creation. And by nature, creation is faulty. It's always going to have a defect, right? We're all limited. We're not perfect. We're not reliable. It can't hold anything. It can give you the blessings, but it can't even hold the blessings. It's a broken cistern that doesn't hold blessings, okay? This verse implies that a person who does not place his trust in God is automatically placing his trust in an entity other than God. Secondly, it implies that just as the broken cistern does not hold water, he will eventually lose the blessings. This is a source for the concept advanced by the author that God's divine providence is removed from those who don't rely on him. And again, it's not that God removes his divine providence as it exists, like it has to continue. It's that he hides himself. There's 2 levels of divine providence. There's where you can obviously see God, and there's the level where it's there. It always has to be there, but it's concealed. Okay. It's just how many layers of concealment do you want in your life? Okay. And then the next verse that he gives us to support this concept is from Tehillim, from Psalms. They exchanged their glory for the likeness of an ox eating grass. What is he referring to? The Het Egel. They exchanged the glory. We had Hashem. And what do we trade him for? For an ox, right? For a golden calf. Okay. So we went and we worshiped the golden calf. So here too, we see that as a result of the Jews substituting God with another entity, God was ready to remove his providence actually by destroying them. It's a very tragic event in Jewish history. And as the verse says, blessed is the man who relies on the Lord, and the Lord will be his support. And this verse, we actually say it at the end of saying Birkat Hamazon. So you might be familiar with it in Hebrew, Baruch HaGever Asher Yiftach B'Hashem V'Haya Hashem Miftacho. Okay, blessed is the person who relies, who depends on God, and God is going to be his support, his reliance. He's going to be his reliance. Look at the word Miftacho. Okay, so again, what you rely on is what's going to be there for you. Okay, so this verse assures that if we have trust in God, we will be protected by him. But it also implies that if we lack trust, we will not be protected. Meaning, we're going to see through the text that this is all, what we call in Hebrew, mida keneged mida. It's, or what David HaMelech says in Tehillim, Hashem silcha. Hashem is your shadow, right? It's a mirror effect. It's a mirror effect. Whatever I put out is going to come back at me. Okay, if I don't want the relationship with Hashem, I said, that's fine, you don't want it. I stay behind the curtain. It's okay. He's very modest. He's constantly giving us, and he's saying, I don't have to interfere. I would love to be there for you. I would love to be in a relationship. Of course, what parent doesn't want to be in a relationship, right? But he's not narcissist or codependent or any of that things. He says, okay, you don't want me. Like, I'll keep giving, but I'll be in hiding, right? You won't see me. But if you're in the relationship, oh boy, if you're in the relationship, wow, you're going to see. You're going to see. You're going to see. You're going to see the chesed. It's going to be so obvious to you. The kindness is going to become really, really obvious. Okay? So again, let's continue. And as it says in Tehillim, fortunate is the man who made the Lord his support and did not turn to the haughty and those who turn to falsehood. This verse praises the person who relies on God rather than turning to others. In this verse, we also see there is a straightforward choice. Either rely on God or another entity. There is no middle ground. And I think it's an important point. And he's literally laying it out from the beginning, from the first benefit. And you might say, well, 1 minute, we were talking about the benefit of tranquility. What does it have to do with tranquility? Just remember that I told you already that, again, he has to tell us this because you have to know that you'll never be a tranquil person. You'll always be an anxious, nervous person. And the root cause of that is going to be that you're putting your reliance on everything else in the world except the only thing that is actually reliable. And again, he's going to prove this later on in the book. Okay, he's going to start the proof in chapter 2, but he's already setting the stage so that you know, please, if you want tranquility, don't fool yourself. Already what the problem is. It's that you're relying on something else. Okay, and as it says, cursed is the man who relies on man and makes flesh his arm and whose heart turns away from the Lord. This verse teaches us that negative things, bad things befall a person who relies on other people rather than on God, supporting the author's original statement that God removes his divine providence from those who do not entrust in him. Now, I want to clarify something in here really important, and I think it's going to become clearer as we move forward in the introduction. The curse is really consequence. It's self-imposed, right? It's because we created, that's the type of relationship we wanted. We wanted to be related to our stockbroker. We wanted to be related to the stock market. We wanted to be related to the lawyer, to the company. That's what we wanted. And the ultimate curse is we're missing out on the biggest gift, which is the relationship. So when we go through this whole journey, we're going to see we started. I don't want to dig this thing called bitachon because I want the payout. But in the end, we're going to see not about the payout. It's about the relationship. That's the biggest payout. And the biggest curse is to not be in the relationship. So it's of my behavior and my actions because I chose not to be in the relationship by not depending on the one who gives me life and everything else. Then obviously I'm going to miss out. That's actually the biggest payout. Okay, so let's continue and see what are the things that he's going to warn us against us putting our trust. Because ultimately he's saying, look, you have to know if you want to be free of worry, you have to trust in this creator. But he's saying, but yet there's a tendency to rely on something else. And now I'm going to get more specific and telling you so that you're not, so there's no questions, no ambiguity. When I tell you that God removes his divine providence from you, you're like, oh, don't do that. Well, let me show you just in case. Just in case don't do that. I'm not talking you personally. I'm talking you general, right? Let me show you some of the typical things, typical areas in your life where you actually might be doing that. And like I said to you in the map of the gate of trust, we're going to see ourselves very often in this book, and we're going to be like, ooh, I've kind of done that. I've been there. I've kind of been that person, or I know that situation. I know people who are in that stage. Okay, so let's read it inside and see what he's going to tell us. Okay, misguided trust. And this is again the deviation, where I am putting my trust other than God. Until now, the author has been explaining in general terms that when a person relies on anything other than God, he's doomed to fail. Now, the author brings specific examples of things that people tend to place their trust in and how they do not provide security? What are the things that I could possibly be relying on? Okay, well, number one is my smarts, my wits, right? Oh, I went to Harvard, right? My wits, my smarts, how clever am I? If he relies on his wisdom, his schemes, his physical strength, and his own efforts, those efforts will be for naught. They'll be for nothing. He will become weak and lose that physical strength, and his schemes and wisdom will fall short of accomplishing his goals. As the verse says, he traps clever people in their shrewdness. This verse, the verse he traps clever people in their shrewdness, is a proof that man cannot rely on his plans, however shrewd they're going to be. At some point, look at look at what you say. You think you have all the tunnels and all the money, and look. Hmm, You're gonna get caught in your own shrewdness. Okay? So it's a wake-up call for all of us. Obviously we're not at the level, thank God, we're very, very good people, right? But he's a wake-up call for all of us. Don't think, oh, it's my wit. It's because I came up with the best idea and the best company and I bought the best merchandise and I hired the best lawyers. No, in the end, you become this haughty person. That's going to be your downfall. That's what you're going to trip over. That. You're going to trip over. You're going to make your suit so big on you that you're going to trip on your suit. Okay. The verse is brought as proof. Okay. That man cannot rely on his plans, however shrewd they may be. And as it says, I returned and saw under the sun that the race does not belong to the swift, nor the war to the mighty, and the wise do not have bread. Again, we have as a nation, we have so many examples of this, right? We're living it right now. You have a war on 7 fronts, maybe 8 fronts, because you also have the media war, right? Billions of dollars accumulated over decades on the destruction of this nation, right? Beautiful soldiers and strong army, but come on, we're just a brain power nation, right? So we can use our experience as a nation to understand, oh yeah, there's a leader of the world who is allowing us to destroy this crazy Hamas and Iran and who it's and you have a 16 war, they're bent on destroying us. It doesn't make sense. But it is. It's our story. Okay, it's our story because again, who do we turn to? And in a year like this year, we've seen the Yidden all over the world have recognized. Oh, it's only Hashem. Yes, we do have an IDF, and yes, we have a beautiful Iron Dome, and yes, and God bless. But who? Everybody recognizes. But who really gives us these capabilities? It's from the Creator. And you have most soldiers in the battlefront will tell you with complete honesty, so many of them have really now turned during this year to realize that it's not it's not our weapons, it's not our strategy. I don't know. There's no way in the world we could win. So let's not fool ourselves and think it's us, it's our schemes, it's our wits. Okay, so this is the trick number one that we kind of as human beings kind of trip over. Okay, we think it's our schemes, it's our wits, it's our might. Nah. Okay, we have nothing to do. Okay, all right. So it would be expected that those who are physically strong would win the war. This verse shows that physical strength and intelligence cannot be relied on for success. It says in Tehillim, young lions suffer want and are hungry, but those who seek the Lord do not lack any good. Okay, so let's continue. Page number 9. The next thing that a person might mistakenly put their reliance on is their money. And if he relies on his abundance of wealth, it will be removed from him and left to someone else. So the next thing I could trip over is my reliance on my wealth. And guess what? That could actually go away, meaning that is not foolproof. It's not fully reliable, just like my wit is not fully reliable upon. because again, my wit does nothing. It's just part of creation. Well, guess what? The balance in my bank account also, it can go in a second. And not only that, he's going to tell us many things that it could actually be detrimental, right? It could be very positive. He'll also explain that in the book. But actually, it could be to a person's detriment. As the verse says, a rich man lies down with his wealth intact. He opens his eyes, and it is no longer his. Similarly, the verse says, do not toil to become wealthy from your own understanding. This is actually from the first verse that I just read, that a rich man lies down with his wealth intact and he opens his eyes and it is no longer his. Sonia's here from Argentina. Anybody who's lived in a country in Latin America, where you experience extreme inflation and you experience like corrupt government, and all of a sudden you had your assets and your wealth, and all of a sudden you wake up the next day and there's nothing in the bank. You remember the Argentinian banking crisis, and you had these people with Chanel suits going to the soup guy. I'll never forget a story that Margie Shara has shared with me many times, that years ago when she didn't live in Miami. I don't know if she lives in Miami or in Colombia, but anyway, so the rabbi from Argentina came collecting for the community, and he was sharing this story. You have people who were very, very wealthy, and overnight in my soup kitchen, you have, Margie says, I remember he said, you have the women coming in Chanel suits to collect in the soup kitchen, because overnight you're left with nothing, right? It's sometimes we don't think that these are, but this is real. Why? Because everything in the world of nature is fickle, and so he's trying to bring the point home. Do not fall for the trap in your life to put your reliance in the fickle elements of nature, because it's going to be to your detriment. And I'm going to show you that you can have the benefit of actual tranquility and so many other benefits if you actually put your trust in something that is reliable. Okay, continuing. And the next verse says, before you can set your eyes on it, it is gone. Similarly, it says, at a young age, his wealth will leave him, and at his end, he will be a disgrace. Alternatively, even if the richest, so number one, he said, the richest could leave you. Like it's that, it can be taken from you any minute. Alternatively, even if the riches themselves are not removed from the person, his ability, God forbid, his ability to enjoy the wealth could be withheld from him. By who? Well, by God, obviously, right? So how many times do we see a person could have tremendous amount of assets and tremendous amount of money in the bank, and they can't enjoy it? Because that money is going to divorces, it's going to a drug rehab treatment, it's going to God forbid, lawyers, right? There's no enjoyment, right? So if that's the world that a person wants to live in, then he's kind of warning us, like, don't get trapped in that, because this is, again, very, very fickle. So, as the wise man says, God gives him no power to eat it. Okay, so it's not, like Rabbi Shestab says, it's not the growth, it's the net. It's how much we get to keep, right? How much do we actually get to enjoy? It's not what you earn; it's what you actually get to keep. And by keep, I mean the good things, right? Not the doctor's bills, and not the rehab, and not who knows. God save us all. If God doesn't want him to derive any enjoyment from his riches, why then does he leave it in his possession? Okay. So what is going on here? So number one, he could take it from the wealth could leave you. Number two, the wealth could stay with you, but you end up losing it in other areas, meaning you're not enjoying it because, yeah, you have all the wealth, but you're just using it for, God forbid, problems that nobody would want. But or it could be that it's with you, but it will be as a deposit so that he will guard it from harm until the time that it will be returned to the one who is deserving of it and for whom it was meant. So perhaps you're holding on to this thing, but it's not even really yours. God is putting it in your possession because it's for somebody else. Okay? And how does he prove this? He gives us two verses. He says, and to the sinner, God gives the urge to gather and amass wealth, to give to the one who is good before God. In the end, this person might be accumulating all this, but it's not even going to be for him. He's going to give it to somebody else. Or the wicked man will prepare, and the righteous man will use it, and the innocent will divide the money among themselves. This verse speaks about the wicked merely preparing for the righteous, implying that the wicked person does not derive any benefit from his wealth. We discussed two possibilities of what might happen to a person who relies solely on his wealth. Number one, he might lose it. Number two, even if he retains it, he will not be able to enjoy it. Now, the author goes further and says that sometimes not only is he not able to enjoy his wealth, but the wealth itself could cause bad things to befall him. Okay, so now here comes. It is possible that his money will be the cause of his misfortune, God forbid, as well as the cause of the destruction of his soul. Again, this doesn't have to be the case. And he's going to talk to us plenty throughout the book about how to relate to your wealth in a very positive way. This is just warning us that if there's misguided trust, if you trust in something that is not trustworthy, this is something that could be, actually. And he's proven to us, he's really dramatically highlighting the point that, sometimes this thing could be the cause of a person's downfall. As the verse says, there is a sickening evil that I have seen under the sun, riches hoarded by their owner to his own misfortune. Okay? All right, so until now, the author elaborated on the first spiritual advantage of bitachon, namely that it causes a person to feel at ease. A person who relies on other people or his own talents or wealth will always worry that his success will not last. And it's funny that they already mentioned here other people, because the next benefit of bitachon is going to have to do with the way we relate to other people. So here he more talks about the wit and the wealth, okay? But the next benefit, where he's going to tell us that we're actually going to be free of this need to people please or to be codependent and needy of others' approval and approbation, right? That's going to be a great benefit. And we're going to see that a person without bitachon is actually a person who is trying, because they rely on this world of nature, they're trying to gain people's favors all the time, right? Because they think they can get something out of someone. But when you have bitachon, not only are you going to be worry-free, because you're going to be relying on that which is actually foolproof instead of your wit, your schemes, your money, right? But you're also going to free yourself, benefit number two, of being in this constant angst of people pleasing and looking to get something out of every relationship, right? It's actually going to free you to have really healthy relationships and authentic relationships. Why? Because you don't rely on any of these people. You just genuinely care for them, but you're not looking to get anything out. You only rely on the one who can give you, who is your creator. Okay, so we're going to leave it with that. We're going to leave it here. And then next week, we're going to start with that second benefit, which is what they call here independence, which I just summarized. Okay, so any comments, any questions? Are we good? We got what we're trying to achieve in the introduction. Beautiful. So again, summarizing, the first benefit is you're going to be worry-free. Why? Because you're actually going to put your trust. It's not going to be misguided trust, but it's going to be trust in the one that is actually reliable. And more importantly, because we have the awareness, because we don't even know yet that he's reliable because he hasn't told us yet, but he's going to prove it to us. But it's more because he's giving us the warning or the awareness that if we, God forbid, put our trust in any of these fickle things, well, we're going to be shortchanged, because we're going to be left in the hands of those things, so to speak. God is going to hide his providence from us, his supervision. The alternative is that God is going to be very much revealed in our lives, and we're going to see the split many, many times in our lives. Okay, with that, I'm not wishing you all Shabbat Shalom because it's not Thursday. I also want to ask a question, and maybe, go Linda.
I want to ask a question about, we are in a material world with...
Correct. And not only that, I'll tell you a step even more than that. Not only do you have to rely on the agent that God is sending to send the refuah, but you also have to actively go and make the phone calls and say, who did you use for that illness? Or who is the best person according to the laws of nature, right? You're going to try to hire the best man for the job, but knowing that it's all in God's hands. Obviously, it's not, you can't even compare it, because like I always say, especially at this point in my life, I've realized that, problems that have to do with money are actually, and I know, we could delve into this, but I'm just going to say it straight up. They're not They're not problems. I've learned in my life. You know what I mean? Like, especially after October 7th, like, with experience and when you have people close to you who really experience real suffering, you say, you know what? If something can be fixed with money, so be it. Even if I don't have the money, so be it. It's not a problem. Thank you, Hashem. You know what I mean? So why am I saying this? Because I just had an incident where I had a leak in my house, right? You have a leak in your house. So now you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be thousands of dollars in expenses. Okay. So you have the alternative. You can panic. You can stress. You can lose sleep over it. You can call, yes, the insurance, the adjuster, this for like being constant lachas, or you can say, what is a natural process? Okay. So 1 second. So I call the plumber. Okay. The plumber, at the time the plumber can come, I do my best to ask him when he has to come. It's Erev Yom Tov. If he can come, please God, he'll come. He comes, he tells me I can't fix the leak. Yom Tov is in an hour. I can't break all the sheetrock on time. Say, okay, Hashem, I could panic. I become crazy. No, stay calm. The leak will stay until I'll come after Yom Tov. The plumber comes back after Yom Tov. What's the next step? Okay, so he fixes the leak. Okay, what's the next step? The next step is, as a responsible person, I have to check what does my insurance say. Right, so I have to look at the document. I would say, okay, maybe I should talk to an adjuster, right? But again, the difference is, do I do this with a tremendous amount of stress? Like, the plumber doesn't come, it's going to be a disaster. If the adjuster doesn't tell me that I'm going to do it. And now I have I have a child who's younger. My older children understand a little bit better, but younger children, they come to the house and they see workers breaking cabinets and they hear that the kitchen might not be functioning. It's very unsettling. It's like, okay, so what is everything, because this is a system. If there's a leak, there might be mold, and then you need to say. So now there's a whole process, right? I'm in the thick of it, and it could be one of these situations where you become very unsettled, like a child, right? Because you don't have the emotional maturity to grasp that, well, the remediation companies are in control. If God wants to, well, it's going to be. I just have to do it, follow the protocol. Obviously, call, the insurance adjuster that seems to be the more qualified. Okay, but again, it's not him that's going to solve the problem, right? Right. So going back to your example, this person, yes, and he's going to, now going to what I said at the beginning of the class, he's going to tell us this answer to your question later on in the book, specifically about medical, right? How a person actually has to go because they cannot be negligent, right? And he's going to answer this obvious question that is sort of what you're alluding to. 1 second, if he's fully dependable and reliable, well, then I could just sit back and relax. I don't have to go to the doctor. I don't have to go get my mammogram every year. I don't have to, go exercise. And he's going to say, no, right? So for that, we have to wait till chapter 3, I want to say. Okay. But yes, that's in a nutshell. Anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay. Amazing. Thank you, ladies. Good to see everyone again.
Bye-bye.